Hello, we are live. I am so happy to be here with Sue. And anyone who is joining us, we'd love to know where you're coming to us from. Sue, where are you?
Hey, I am in India and I am so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I know this is your first time doing a video thing, but not
Yeah,
only that, but a video thing live. So that's amazing. I'm so happy to have you.
I know. I probably look nervous and I sound nervous, but it's okay.
You do not look or sound nervous. So,
Yeah.
tell us about you. Tell us about who you are, what you do.
So I'm a salesperson and I'm from India. I've been working remote for the last 15 years and I've been working largely for the US market. I work currently as a customer success and project manager, but um, have been in sales from the time I started working in 2004 and worked with some big companies, some small companies, but I just love sales.
What do you love about sales?
I love the fact that we can solve people's problems with sales.
That's
So it's all
amazing.
about building relationships and, um, you know, customers are really nice people. So,
Okay, well, we've got a couple people joining us. We've got Christine in Orlando. We have someone over in Boise. And then we've got Catherine. So we've got a couple people who have hopped on, and we so appreciate it. We've got, oh, Geraldine from Richmond, Virginia. So that's awesome. So happy to see people joining us. If anyone has any questions or comments they want to share, please feel free to drop them in the comments and we will share them on screen or have Sue answer those questions. So tell me, what has your journey been like in sales?
um, a little bit of ups and downs, but largely been okay. I think I started my career as an inside sales rep, which we now call, an AE, and moved on, did a lot of SDR role. I like being an SDR and I like sales development. And, whenever I've done sales, it's always been like I consider myself an AE, irrespective whether I'm working as an SDR or not, or working an SDR manager. I think because the most important thing that I found throughout my sales journey is that, taking responsibility is the most important thing. And that only happens if you think like an AE all the time.
No, I
So,
100% agree. I myself was a full sales cycle AE, and thinking like an AE and taking ownership of your numbers
mhm,
and results is so important, even as an SDR, because it's yours. What you
right.
bring to the table and the results that you produce is what you
Yeah.
do. So it's really
Yeah.
important to take that ownership. So what has been like your biggest challenges? We talked about this episode being your unique experience from across
Mhm.
the globe as a woman in sales. Tell us about what that particularly is like and what challenges you faced with that.
Yeah, the biggest challenge is with surprisingly not with the customers, but more with the companies and management because customers eventually understand they're like pretty nice people, like I said. And it, it's hardly been an issue with a customer that, hey, you're from India and you're working from India. They don't really care. You know, the customers are really bothered about getting their problem resolved and their pain, completing whatever pain issues that they have. They don't really bother you're sitting in India or in the US. It really doesn't matter to them, and they're really nice people. They're understanding. You know, most of the customers have been like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry to keep you awake." That's that's
Yeah.
what's happened, And I think the biggest challenge has been with more with the companies and with the management saying like, "Hey, you're based in India." I'm like, it doesn't matter to customers, but it seems to matter to the companies.
Okay. Can you expand on that at all? Like, what can you give me a specific example of something you've experienced with that's been a challenge for you?
Yep, I think with a lot of these companies, especially with SaaS companies, and people think that, of course, Indians have a different accent, right? I do too, and it's not the accent that you have, right? And even if my English is perfect and I don't have grammar issues, and I don't say things the wrong way, it's going to sound different. And, because I don't sound American, I've had several times when people are like, it's not going to work out because customers want people based in the US and you don't sound like you're in the US. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's sort of disappointing. I mean, I can definitely vouch for your grammar. You helped me out with proofreading an article yesterday, and I was like, well, okay, this is all the stuff I missed, and I'm like, wow. And I appreciated that, but that's a reality for you is unfortunate, but it happens. We do have a question here from Catherine. Um, and she would like to know the challenges of working in a different time zone, country, etc. So tell us
Um,
about that.
I think with the time zone, not really. Early in the career, yes, because you've got to get used to it, right?
Mhm.
You've got to get used to being, sleeping at different times, working at different times. But now it just feels like second nature. You know, it, it's just matter of fact. I'm like, I don't even know how. I don't even see that as a challenge anymore. The first couple of years, yes, we do feel a lot because you need to adjust your body climb, time clock. But otherwise, time zone there's not really an issue because you get most of your work done in the day and everything is fine. But challenges in terms of culture, yes, there is. Uh, I think small things like in our culture we don't ask questions. Okay, and even if you're a kid, you're like, don't ask questions. And that's one big thing. Like, when you start working, you have to ask questions, especially if you're in sales, right? You We just told like, talk less, listen more, which is fine. But if you don't ask questions, how are you going to get answers, right? So there are small things like that in culture which helps, which we need to adapt to. The other thing that I was talking to someone the other day, and storytelling is one big part of it, right? As a part of sales, the way we are, like in a professional setting, especially in Indian culture, we kind of get direct to the point, right? Whereas in the US, it might be considered rude if you're like, hey, I'll just get to the point and get done with it, right? Which is why I had a lot of trouble getting my emails and stuff done because my emails sound more like direct to the point.
Yeah, I can definitely hear you on that. Especially being a New Yorker, right?
Mm.
So New Yorkers are direct and to the point, whereas there are other parts of the country that are less direct, right? So I actually had to learn over my career to adapt to that as well.
Mhm.
To tend to take a little bit more time to not be so direct and be more conversational.
Yeah.
So, how have what strategies did you really implement to adapt? Do you have any?
I think the most important thing is to be, listen, right? Listen and take as much responsibility as you can. That's what has helped me learn more. And the more you learn, the more you adapt, right? Just be open. And what I believe is, there's nothing wrong in learning from anyone. Just be open to learning and keep an open mind. Like, be receptive to feedback. That's what I do. I always like, I go and ask for feedback all the time. I don't wait for it to come to me, and I'm the one who's always asking for feedback because I know there are going to be gaps, especially in in communication. How much ever I try, I'm not going to sound like a native speaker, right? So
100%.
yeah, so I'm always asking like, hey, if I don't understand something, I'm always open to asking like, hey, you know what? I don't understand this. I don't know what you're saying, and there's no shame in saying I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's that curiosity that certainly helps. We do have a question here. Are there many women in leadership positions in India?
Yes, there are in sales leadership. No, not many.
Okay. So just in leadership in general, but not specifically
Yes.
like in sales.
Right. Yes. I mean, India, everyone knows that it's more of a technical, you know, a tech-based development, software development, and all of that. But in sales leadership, not many. No, it's still a very male-dominated, uh, you know, scenario, especially in sales.
as much of the tech sector is as well here. Do you feel like when you're targeting opportunities, why do you target the US? I mean, is that because there are more opportunities here? Tell me about that.
I think because, one, it's a bigger country,
Hmm.
right? It's a developed country. After US, it's always UK and Australia. It's a first world country. It's just plain logic as to why we wouldn't. Again, like Singapore is also, it's a developed country. It's in the top, top 10 countries of the world and stuff. But we don't because it's really small. So there's only so much that you can do, right? Whereas the US is, just geographically, it's much bigger, and the value per dollar, it comes down to money at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Marna Becker has a nice comment. She says, huge fan of both Sue and Jen. Always a pleasure to hear your insights, Sue. So that was very nice.
Yeah,
Catherine
mine is very
says, New York direct. So some acknowledgement there. I was talking to Mark Mack the other day because we're getting ready to have him on in January.
nice.
And we were talking about sort of that directness that New Yorkers have versus some of the other parts of the country.
Yeah, especially with like cold calling,
Hmm.
with this whole thing about build a relationship before you pitch. If I was doing that, I'd suck at it because I'm more of a person who believes like, hey, you know what? I can go about this, you know, asking, can we go about the roundabout way? And do you want to get to know each other first, or should I just go about business? And I personally prefer just getting down to business. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm calling you for business, but I'd love to know you. But this is why I'm calling and why I'm reaching out. So it talks about finding that perfect blend.
Yeah, no, and I understand that as well. So you have a comment here from Sean, who great to see Sue stepping up and speaking about these important points, sending my support from here in Bristol, UK. So that was really nice.
Yeah,
We
thanks,
also have
Sean.
a comment here from Larissa. You've been doing what you do for a long time. What is the one thing you've learned that you wish you knew starting out? That is a great question.
Mm, what is it that I wish I knew starting out?
Mhm.
Honestly, I think I wish I knew how to go into corporates, honestly, because, had I known the corporate culture, I would have stuck to like startups from day one. And because there's so much to learn in startups,
Mhm.
right, especially in sales and getting the full sales cycle. Whereas, when you're in uh, like in a corporate environment, you kind of uh, just do what you're told, right? You can't you know, learn beyond your job description.
Yeah, no, startups definitely have an environment that allows for that fast growth, right?
Yeah,
Both from a company standpoint, but also from a internal what you're learning and
yeah.
how you're adapting to the changing landscape and how quickly you can make the changes and adapt. I appreciate that as someone who enjoys a fast pace. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you also enjoy a fast pace?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just doing the same thing over and over again without, sometimes you need your voice to be heard and you want to try different things and you want to do a lot, but you can't do a lot of that in, personally for me, I haven't found that I can do a lot of that in the corporate culture. You're given a script and you need to stick to the script.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So you made a choice, right, to be more visible recently.
Hmm. Hmm.
First with the Sales Outcast podcast, right? And
Yeah.
then, with quad meets and coming here. Why did you want to do that? Like, how does that fit with your goals?
Uh, I think just finding, it's also a lot about personal development, building your brand. And now more than ever, it's important to kind of build your brand and I think step out of your comfort zones, which is all what sales is about. And
Yeah.
especially if you want to reach sales leadership positions. And being a woman in sales is not easy, especially from across the globe. And, people have to know that you're capable and I guess unless you start that people now, you need to start telling them that you're capable versus them just noticing. So
Yeah. No, that's great. So I had the opportunity to come on the Outcast podcast. Um, so tell me about that. You've had a lot of interesting guests recently, and I've
mm,
listened to almost every episode. So tell me what that process has been like.
the Sales Outcast podcast, it's really about the atypical salesperson, and something that I really want to do from quite some time, especially because there are a lot of people who don't really fit in a box, right? And unfortunately, the sales culture is all about fitting in, and it's not like you're going to buy shoes that you need to fit in. And especially even if you buy shoes that fit you. You don't fit into shoes, right?
Hmm.
So, you know, people don't have to fit into roles. The roles should fit the people.
Yeah,
You
no,
need to,
100%.
yeah. So, the organizations of people we work with should fit in with the people and versus having the people fit in with you. And that is, the main concept behind the sales outcast is to let people know that it's okay. You don't have to fit in. You don't have to make a box for yourself and try to get in there. And companies need to realize as well that, that box isn't going to help. They need to, make the box out of something that is more pliable so that people, you know, they don't have to fit in really. And they need to make room for everyone.
Yeah. Do you think that companies are starting to adapt to that? Because I still see a lot of this concept of the culture fit, right? The Forbes tribal meaning of, people who look the same, who talk the same, who, fit into the team rather
Mm.
than looking at people for what they bring to the table that's unique.
Yeah. Unfortunately, more than 50% of the population still believes in, not changing. And because, I saw a post, I don't remember by whom, but I think about a week or so ago about, wanting to break the bro culture,
Hmm.
right? And more than 50% of the comments were just about, you know, uh, against that person and against the whole concept of trying to discuss what the bro culture is and how we need to break free of that was, totally ignored. Like, you know, uh, yeah. So people, it comes across very clearly that people still don't want to accept and they want people like them.
Hmm.
And numbers prove for themselves. We can't get real data. I mean, because nobody's going to accept, right? Saying that, hey, didn't hire you because you don't fit in. They're going to find excuses. But if you see, like, out of a 10-member board, you just have one woman, then that speaks for itself.
Yeah. I think there was a study out there that said that you needed to have 30% representation of any type of person in order for anyone in that group to feel comfortable bringing new ideas to the table.
Yeah.
And, we talk a lot about, psychological safety and having inclusive work environments, but just not having that one person doesn't mean that that one person is going to feel comfortable to bring their ideas and their unique perspective. Um, so creating those environments, but also making sure that you're creating an environment that really is inclusive and that you're ready
Mm.
for any diversity that you're bringing in. I think is super important as we're talking about this.
Yeah, and diversity should be like, a complete diversity. If you're talking about diversity, just don't have diversity for the sake of diversity. Have pay parity with diversity.
Hmm.
It should be there. Like pay parity is a big factor with diversity. You just don't say that, hey, I'm going to have women sales, but I'm going to pay them 40%. That doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I completely
I
agree.
I'm like, me. I'm like, I'm a rather straight person. So I'm like, I call up people. I'm like, if you say you're remote, just have it remote. I can be in Netherlands, I can be in UK, I can be in India, I can be in Sri Lanka, wherever in the world. If you say you're remote, if you don't, then you don't say you're remote. You just work from home kind of a company.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think they need to be more specific. If it's just like if they put a particular location, but they are open to remote, then why don't you just say that?
Hmm.
I think they need to be job descriptions need to be clearer to begin with, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
So folks love your analogy, love the fitting in the box analogy, Sue. Sue's such a great analogy. I agree. Where people are trying to, you know, make you fit in a box, and if you don't fit in the box, then you're outside the box, and that doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
I think it's been a problem for a while. So you've had a good deal of people on the Sales Outcast podcast now.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
what has that been like?
You know, I'm amazed at the positive, you know, people how positive they are, despite the struggles that they face, especially with, I've had so many amazing guests, and each of them has had their own journey, right? And not one of them has come out of it negative, right? Which goes to say a lot about the kind of people that they are. And I think everyone should realize that, irrespective of who we are, the color we are, and what goes on back home, and the kind of culture and ethnicity we are, we're all working towards a common goal, right? Which is, doing well for ourselves and for the company that we work for. So, you know, um, yeah, I have learned a lot from each one of them. And I keep going back to it. I'm like, there's so much I can relate from each person. I could relate from Marcus, from you, from Ashley. I'm like, this, and from Catherine. I'm like, there's so many things I can relate from each person that I talk to.
Yeah, no, and I love all the different stories myself. I loved Marcus's episode and Catherine's as well, of just all the different perspectives that you get to bring with this. And I agree. There's been every episode has got a lot of positivity, right?
Right. Yeah.
For
Especially like Larry, as if you heard Larry Long Jr.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh
And
yeah,
then,
and he's just a ball of energy.
yeah, that's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know anyone could be that positive.
Yeah, Larry Long
Yeah.
Jr. definitely takes the positivity award.
Yeah. I've never met someone who's that positive. I'm like, there's got to be something. I'm like, there's got to be something that sit down. I'm like, nothing. I'm like, wow,
Mhm.
amazing.
Well, and he brings like a personal joy to everything he does,
Yes.
which I really appreciate about him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, he's made me see things. I'm like, okay, that isn't possible. I'm like, okay, there's a lot I got to learn, especially for me. Like, I won't say I'm like totally pessimist, but I'm like a very realist kind of a person. I'm like, nah, I'm like, I'm not one of those optimistic people who always see the bright side of things. So, I think it's a breath of fresh air, and I've got lots to learn from him.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the time zones. So I'm not great at time zones, I'll admit it. So what are your working hours in your time zone? Like what hours?
Typically from about 8:30 in the night to about 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's typically my work timing, and which is why anything beyond 7 EST feels like, oh my gosh, I need to sleep.
Yeah. And how does that impact like your family life?
I mean, it's okay. Like, it's a little grown up, so everything is fine. By the time I'm like resting there in school, or at least with online school now, and so when they're done, it's like when we have time, and actually it works out well because I can actually spend time with them during the day.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I said, the first couple of years takes adjusting, and you need to figure out, but eventually it's fine because, again, like if you look at it, you've got a longer weekend. I've got a half day extra.
Hmm. So when do you sleep? Is
I
that a weird
sleep.
question?
I sleep in breaks. Train my body to do so. two
You sleep
hours,
in
2 hours breaks. Yes.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. At least with COVID, it's like a little better because I get continuously 3 hours of sleep. But otherwise, it's even worse. It's like 1 hour break, 2 hours break.
Wow. Like I can't imagine that. We've got some great comments here. Mark says midweek motivational moment is awesome. Yes. we'll have to tag Larry Long Jr., let him know we talked about him so much. Sue, Catherine says, Sue, love being on your show. Thank you for having me. Mark says, if you have 1/2 of 1% of the energy, you have more than most. It's true for Larry Long Jr. If you have just a fraction of his energy, you've got, you have a lot to work with right there. And I love that. And then Geraldine says, I was just wondering the same thing about sleeping. Yeah, I don't know how I would adapt to that. And I consider myself a pretty adaptable person, but I need my sleep, you know?
No, I think it works because I don't sleep much anyway.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, it works out because I can't sleep much anyway. The days I sleep long, I have the worst dreams. I'm like, I'd rather not sleep.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
And that's the beauty of everyone being different, right? Everyone's got our own things and our own what we need to be happy and what makes us content. So if you have any final words to share with us, we're right at about time soon. And then I want to share with the audience what we have upcoming. But what final thoughts would you have to share with everyone who's in our audience today?
It's okay to sell from wherever you are selling, and honestly, the customers don't mind, so I don't think the company should mind either.
100%. And I would also say that kindness matters, right?
Yeah.
That to everyone, we are all coming from different places, right? We're all coming from, whether it's a country, whether it's a different background, whether it's, whatever it is, that, being considerate to others and being kind is always important.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad that you decided to step out of your comfort zone and come do video, and not only video, but live. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. I couldn't have done it without, if it was not you, I wouldn't have done it.
Oh, that's so nice to say. Though I did prod you a bunch, but
Yeah.
I really wanted you to just take that step and start to feel comfortable doing it. And this has been great. So next week, I've got Michelle Hayes joining me, and we're going to talk about stress, how she gets over stress, how I get over stress, besides what I do when I call her to get over my stress. And then I have Ladies Happy Hour on Wednesday night at 7. And I have a stellar lineup of women who are all going to talk about, they're all moms. So this is sort of a follow-up to the Ladies Happy Hour we did in October for Mom Life. But Catherine Robles, Michelle Hayes, Rachel May, Tara Heuschmeyer, Veronica McGimby, Alexa Scott, Christine Rogers, Nikki Ivy, and Shadi Buckland. So I've got an amazing lineup of women. I can't wait to do that. And then that will wrap up my year on LinkedIn Live. And then I've got a stellar lineup already for 2021. I'm actually booked up through like mid-March already.
Wow.
So pretty exciting. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone who joined us. And hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks, guys.